Hello. Uh, Welcome back to Script Notes Special. This is a continuation of our last Script Notes, where we talked about all of the lovely Blood on the Clock Tower characters and how good they are at putting into a tier list. It was so much fun that we decided we'd do it again. And also, we didn't finish, so we kind of had to. Um, and we're probably not going to finish today either, but that's okay. This is part two. So if you want to go and watch, if you want to know where we left off last time, the video is now available on YouTube. So if you see something on your screen right now and you're like, wait, what the hell? Why is that there? Why is Evil Twin so high? Why is Butler S tier? Why do we hate the acrobats so much? Are you just mean to circus performers? You can go and find out exactly why we thought what we think. And I say we because, as always, I have with me a Navian. Hi, Navian.
Hello, I'm slightly late because when I was leaving physical therapy, I had to help a caterpillar cross the parking lot safely.
This is news to me, but that is also very understandable. I was once, I think, 15, 20 minutes late to football practice when I played American football for my university because, well, a cat walked up to me, so I had to pet it, obviously, and then it didn't leave, so I had to keep petting it. And then, yeah, I was very late. So I know the feeling, although this was a cat, not a, you say caterpillar.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, good, because that joke wouldn't have worked otherwise. You say you're late. We didn't actually tell people what time we'd be starting. I think we said we'd be starting either in 20 minutes or 40 minutes ago. I can't remember. And we weren't. We were supposed to be starting 10 minutes ago. But yeah, it's all the same. You're here now. We've got people here. I think. Well, we've got one person here. It's probably
Yep.
you.
And I also have a hard out time of 4:15 my time, so we should just get right into this.
Absolutely. We're probably going to break this second part into another two parts because we probably don't have time to get through everything. But don't worry.
We do if we speed through it. Come on, we can do this. I believe in us.
The last one took 2.5 hours. We've got 1.5 for this one.
I believe in us.
But yes, if you missed the previous one, it is now on YouTube. I'll post a link. There it is. Do feel free to watch it when you're done here if you want to know what's going on. So yeah, just a quick recap for everyone's benefit. We are judging characters not by... Oh, we've got ads. That's fine. The ad can stay. Not by how much we like the characters or how good characters we think they are or how much we like to run them or any of that. We're judging them by how much we like them as script builders. There's two main axes for that. There's how well does it fit onto any script that you just put it on. You just go, oh, here's a script. I'm going to put that character on it. Does it still work? And also, if you have a script where it's a featured character, how likely is that script going to be to have a whole bunch of interesting stuff you can do on it? Is that fair?
Yes.
Awesome. So let's get right into it. I don't remember which of us we left off with, so I might as well start by talking about Legion, which I think is going to surprise people when I say that this isn't terrible, but it's not going to surprise people when I say that it isn't brilliant, because I think that Legion, from a script building perspective, can really offer an explanation for any number of things that can happen. I think a lot of scripts, you can put Legion on them and they will be fine, if not improved. However, there are also a good number of characters that Legion doesn't really work that well with. So that's probably keeping it away from the upper echelons for me. So I think that this one is going to come in as a B tier because I think that it scores reasonably well on both of our tests, but doesn't do brilliantly on either of them. What do you think?
I probably put it in C tier personally. I think that you really, really have to pay attention to what else is on the script with Legion, both in your townsfolk and in your demons. I think that Vortox can be sometimes a bit of a crutch because there are so many townsfolk that don't really work that great with Legion. So I'd kind of put it in C tier, but
All right, well, let's see.
I think a low B could work, a high C, low B.
Well, let's see what chat think. You've heard our thoughts. Do you think that Legion is a B tier character or a C tier character from a script design perspective? And remember, this is a script design perspective, not how much you like the character. Script design. You can vote if you want. And we will move on to talking about Leviathan. What do you think of Leviathan?
So Leviathan is another one that you kind of have to be really, really careful when you're scripting around. Obviously, people know when a Leviathan is in play, barring specific things like poisoning your demon. But, people are going to know that Leviathan is in play. You also have to be careful with what townsfolk you put on, because you don't want to overpower the evil team, which is very easy to do when they're going to have 4 to 5 days, or nights and days of information. So I'd probably put this in like a low B, maybe a high C, just because it can be difficult to write a full-size script around.
So I think that there are a lot of characters that Leviathan doesn't work with. I think that there are a lot more that it really doesn't work with than, for example, Legion. I think that it's a demon that really benefits from being the focus of its script. So, and I think there's a lot that you can do with that. So I think it does score reasonably well on the how interesting is it if you build a script around it front. But I think there are just too many characters that it cannot play with at all. I think that anything that kills is at best problematic with Leviathan. That's not to say that they can't work, but they might not be the best. Anything that relies on executions probably is going to struggle, although they can be made to work if you have exactly one of them. Anything that gets very, very helpful info for surviving can be an issue. Like a Flower Girl can just straight up pinpoint a demon in a Leviathan game if they're trusted. And of course, anything that Leviathan is jinxed with that require that require deaths in the night can provide for a really unfun game with Leviathan. So for that reason, I think it's C tier.
That's fine.
Okay. We are also what do we say for
the poll B1 for Legion.
B1 for Legion. All right, so now we're going to talk about the Librarian for a bit. I think that the Librarian is actually quite a flexible character. I think that it works best when it's got a mix of outsider types. So it's got outsiders that might want to out and might not want to out. I don't think it's necessarily the best, but I also don't think it's the worst with outsiders that want to stay hidden for any number of reasons, like a Fangu. It's really strong for the town, don't get me wrong, but it can be a little bit not the best feeling for an outsider to get jumped whilst being a confirmed outsider and having absolutely no say in it. That said, I do think that the Librarian fits quite neatly onto a lot of scripts. It's not necessarily the most powerful character in the game, so I think that this is an A, but I could see the argument that it's a B. What do you think?
It's kind of in between A and B. It's a very simple, straightforward character, which does make it easy to put on scripts. But I think that I see a lot of custom scripts with it on, and I'm like, what is the Librarian actually doing here? There's nothing to counter it. None of the outsiders have any reason to hide or anything. So you do kind of have to pay attention to some of those. So it's kind of in between for me. So I would be all right with wherever in either A or B.
All right. What do you reckon about that one then, chat? We'll put it an A for now, but if there's an overwhelming consensus for B, then I think we'll drop it down. What do you think about the little monster? This is we're really getting into some of the fun ones here. You can see that we've got a few more coming up.
Yeah, so obviously we don't have a write-up on Lil Monster yet, which means that we have a lot of things that we don't actually know how it works with. We just are making our best guesses. Without that write-up, I think it's hard for us to comment super deeply about it. I actually think for the most part for script writing, it's not that difficult to do something with Lil Monster. I think you can actually put Lil Monster on quite a lot of scripts and it would be okay there. Maybe not fantastic with certain things, but I think for the most part, it doesn't play as poorly as, say, Legion or Riot. So I would put it in B tier, but higher than Legion in that B tier.
Yeah. I've put it in uncharacter because that's funny. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. I think you could make a case for it being a low A tier character, but I'm absolutely fine with putting it in B tier. I think that it's a character that there are certainly minions that it works with better than others, and there are certainly townsfolk that play against it better than others. I think that's kind of where we're looking for a B tier character, right? I think it's a good character. It's a good character for script builders to have available. It plugs a gap that, like you say, Legion can also plug, but I think it plugs that gap in slightly more situations than Legion does. Yeah, so let's talk about the Leech for a bit. The Leech is at first glance, it looks like the Leech can't go any higher than B because it kind of requires another character that can prevent deaths from executions. But I think that you and I agree that it doesn't need that. There are situations where it might help to have that, but it doesn't need to be covered. You can have a Leech that if it gets executed, that's fine.
You're just an outed Leech. Yeah, it's fine. Right. Like, you get to then go into the mind games. It's fine.
And the downside of the Leech is the strength of the Leech from both a gameplay and a script building perspective, which is that its poison needs to do something, but if its poison screams, "Hello, everybody, I'm poisoned," then you either need a whole bunch of explanations as to why that player can be poisoned, or you need the poison to be effective but subtle.
I think what you need is to not put too many mechanical rolls on, because that's the Leech's biggest trap, is the mechanical rolls knowing that they're not working and therefore just killing themselves as a host. I think Leech shines when you have a lot of information rolls and you have a storyteller who is good at crafting the misinformation, knowing when to give true information, knowing when to give false information, knowing what false information to give. Because it doesn't work with a lot of those mechanical roles, I would probably put it into C tier. I don't want to, because I like the Leech and I would like to put it higher, but in terms of what it actually is difficult for a Leech to be scripted with, I think it has to go into C tier.
I agree. I think it's a C tier character. I think that you can make a case for it being a B tier character, but I've seen a lot of people go, okay, this Leech is, particularly when it was new, go, okay, Leech is fun. It involves death manipulation. Let's put it in BMR and see how that plays. And the answer is really badly. Don't do that. But that kind of highlights that it does require a bit of a niche.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm happy with C. What do you think about the Lunatic?
Lunatic is fun. I think it really, really shines on Teensies quite a lot. Honestly, there's some things that you can get that's a little bit weird with it. Like, there's always the question of, is there an implicit even while dead? If you have a Lunatic Zomboul after their first death, can you still wake them? And there's always those kinds of discussions. But for the most part, regardless of what way you run it, it doesn't really cause too many issues. I would probably put it into A tier. But okay. I could be convinced otherwise.
Okay. I think that the Lunatic is one that people will have very strong disagreements about. Because I think that there are people who think that Lunatic, particularly people who only play online, or people who think that the Lunatic should be more of an outsider than necessarily ends up being a lot of the time. I think that Lunatic doesn't work if it's not, like you say, on a Teensyville, or at least paired with Poppygrower or Magician. And there's a sense in that perspective, like the Lunatic can ultimately become, after a day, a character without an ability. The demon knows who you are, sort of thing. And obviously Lunatic as a townsfolk is a bit of a meme that you hear sometimes. But from when we spoke to Steve, that never really came across as the intention of the character. So bearing that in mind, what the Lunatic is supposed to do, I do think that the Lunatic can do that on not any scripts, because there are demons that it doesn't work too great with. Like Lunatic Al-Hadikia is nonsense. Lunatic, yeah. But I do think Lunatic Little Monster is wacky. But I do think there's enough there.
And that's why it's not S tier for me, is there are a couple of demons that it doesn't really work great with, like Al-Hadikia or Lil Monster.
Yeah, but I agree that there is enough there to make it an A tier character. That cannot be said about the Lycanthrope, which I think is one of the characters that requires the absolute most careful script building. I think there is something to be said for the idea that a Lycanthrope, when put on a really good script, can have a lot of super interesting things that it can do on that script. But that script is so hard to build and needs to play around so many different things and potential pitfalls that I'm finding it hard to push the Lycanthrope out of the D tier for script building. But I could see it being C because there are interesting things it could do. What's your stance?
I'm pretty sure Lycan generally belongs in the D tier for script building. As Molly says, Lycan is D for dog. It is a bad dog. You can make scripts around it that do work, but there's only like you'll see the same things coming up, right? It's always Lycanthrope with Innkeeper and Recluse so that they have things that aren't evil. Like it's just, yeah, it's not great for script building.
Yeah. So that leads us on to the Magician, the character that I have called in the past, the sad little poppy grower. How do you feel about it for script building?
Works weird with Evil Twin. Don't make them the good twin. Other than that, like, there's really no issues with it. Like, it's a very, very versatile role.
I think it works weird with Evil Twin, regardless of how you do it.
That's true. Yeah, it does work a little weird with Evil Twin, no matter what. But yeah, for the most part, that's like its only negative interaction, I think.
Yeah, it is very much a script. Sorry, it is very much a character that you can go. This script is lacking your character. Do I want a magician? And the answer to that is often maybe. I think it's very rarely no, doesn't work. Get it off here. So I don't think it can go below an A. Do you think it's an S tier character?
I'm kind of tempted to put it in S. Yeah, I think it's one sort of weird interaction with Evil Twin is not enough to bump it all the way down to A for me.
It's also quite weird with Legion, because Legion doesn't know how many Legionnaires there should be, so they don't know that there's a magician that they need to contend with.
That's true. I mean, I think it's okay to run Legion with Magician a little bit weirdly, like every once in a while on a Magician script with Legion, just wake them all together so they know for sure that there's no Magician. I think that's fine to do every once in a while, not all the time, but like you can also just run it in, as Molobak is saying, that you just tell the Legion that there's a Magician. I think that's fine too. I also think maybe storytellers should consider doing things that are like, okay, we should assume that there's a Legion or that there's a magician in here by putting only, say, 3 townsfolk in, one of them being a magician, so they learn only 2 players who are good. And I think most groups should be able to surmise that there's a magician in there, because it's extremely harsh to only put 2 townsfolk in a Legion game, right? So I think there's ways to make it work quite easily with Legion, even though rules as written, those things don't exist.
Yeah. Okay, I'm happy to put it in S. So the Marionette, I think, is to the evil team, and this is not an original observation by any means, but it is to the evil team what the drunk is to the good team. It's a character that produces a bit of misinformation, but the Marionette takes up a minion slot rather than an outsider slot, but gives the demon a bit more information and gives the demon a lot of interesting social plays that can be made. Obviously, there are people who disagree on the utility of some of those social plays, but they're definitely there. Is there any reason not to put that the Marionette wouldn't fit on the script that you've just built?
Yeah, I would say things like Undertaker and even Dreamer some of the time. Dreamer's a little bit less bad as Undertaker, but things that can confirm that the marionette is the marionette. It really doesn't work great with Minstrel, but of course Minstrel just is its own issue. We'll get there when we get there. I think that you can have some weird interactions with regards to like setup stuff where even though it doesn't say it, it's technically like a soft -1, but you could also run it with an alternate setup option to make it a soft +1. So I think there's some weird stuff there. I would probably put it in A tier.
Yeah. I did briefly, for a short moment, forget about that game. You know the game I'm talking about.
I do know the game you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah. Where, for the benefit of people listening in, I was a marionette who thought that they were the chef, and my execution that I pushed for completely solved the game for the good team. Thanks to the Oracle, I think, and also the fact that the poison had to keep poisoning themselves. It's a long story. But yeah, I think that sort of character can point at the demon in a not very fun way. So yeah, A tier. A tier is probably the right call for that one. But how about the chair friend, the mastermind?
I think it's difficult to write a script for. You do have to have multiple reasons that there could be no deaths happening in the night. You might want to consider pairing it with things that can also cause extra deaths in the night, so it's not always obvious when it's a mastermind day. This is getting outside of script. Well, that's a personal opinion. Unfun for me, metas. It's a little hard for me to separate my feelings on Mastermind as a character from like script building, but I still think it falls somewhere in like C/D tier. Yeah. Yeah. Yep, I agree. So I'm happy to put it either as a low C or like a high D.
I apparently accidentally muted myself. So, yes, what I said was that Mastermind, I don't know if I've ever seen a script where it works that isn't just BMR. It plays opposite the Zumble really nicely. It kind of relies on it almost. But yeah, without some of the BMR characters, it's tricky. So yeah, we thinking D for that one?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
The mathematician is an interesting one because it's kind of the opposite of that one of a character that we talked about earlier. I can't remember which one, but it's a character that looks like it will fit neatly anywhere, but it can be so strong on if it's not properly thought out. Like,
yeah,
there are times when it can do absolutely nothing, and there are times when it can break the game in half.
Yeah, I think like if your script only has like one source of misinformation that the mathematician could be detecting, then your math is going to be incredibly strong. Don't do that. So, like I'd probably put it in B tier because I think
yeah.
I think it's not too hard to actually like write a script where math fits in on, but it is just you have to be you have to pay attention.
Yeah. I've definitely seen mathematicians solve games. I've definitely seen them do absolutely nothing. But yeah, like you say, it's definitely not the hardest character to put on the script if you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So then we need to talk about the matron. We've got our first traveler of the episode. where does the matron compare? Because we've ranked a lot of the travelers quite highly so far.
Honestly, I love Matron. I think it plays really, really interesting with anything that does anything with neighbors. So
I agree.
Nodashi, Empath, Tea Lady. It also changes around some dynamics and metas by not allowing you to talk to like various people. That's actually gameplay rather than script play. But like, I don't know. I don't see any reason for it not to be S tier right now.
Yeah. So I suppose the question then is, it can certainly do a lot of interesting things with characters, so it definitely checks off that side of it. Are there any characters that it's not so good with? I'm struggling to think of anything, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine. Just bang it straight in S tier. The mayor, on the other hand, I don't think can be S tier. So the problem with Maya is the opposition that it faces from the evil team. It doesn't really have.
Sure.
It doesn't really have too many issues with any fellow good characters, townsfolk or outsiders in general. But if you've got a demon that can poison, or if you've got a demon that can kill 2 or 3 times in the night, you might, or if you've got an evil player that can just kill it, whether that's a psychopath or a godfather or even a pit hag.
Right.
I think assassin is fine because assassin's whole thing is you punch through protection.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that if you've got anything which might not give you a final day, a final 3, or anything which might take the mayor out prematurely, and without giving the storyteller control over it, or anything which might which means that the mayor is just not gonna even bother going for it, like a Puka. I think that's where it falls down. But at the same time, we saw from the Clock Tower conscript competition, you can absolutely build some really interesting scripts with it. Is it B tier?
Yeah. I'm personally inclined to put it into A, but I could accept a high B as well.
I could be tempted by an A. Let's throw this one back to chat while we. Why do you think it's A?
I think that the limitations that we did talk about are really not actually all that bad. Like, okay, it's not great with a Puka. I've been a mayor on a Puka Poisoner script. Not only Puka Poisoner scripts, but like Puka Poisoner were in play, and we knew that. And yes, as a mayor, I was very, very sad at the end. But like, okay, avoid one of the demons for poison reasons and a couple of others for multi-kill reasons. Pretty much everything else it works with. It doesn't have any weird interactions with like its fellow good players, as you said. So I put it into A, but like B also works.
Yeah. Let us know what you think, chat. There is a vote open. What do you think about Zephyles?
So it's another one that has alignment changing stuff, which means you need to watch out for other alignment changers. Other than that, there's not really anything that I think it doesn't fit with. So like for me, it falls into A tier for like where we put Fangu for sort of similar reasons. That's the only issue that it has is you got to watch out for extra alignment changers.
Yeah. I do think it's a B, but like, my instinct is it's a B, but then again, my instinct was that Fangu is a B. And I think we did decide on, I think chat eventually decided on an A for Fangu, or we might have compromised, I'm not sure. But yeah, I think that the Mezephiles +1 its ability is functionally +1 evil. Obviously, it can get killed before it can do that, and it gets control over where that evil is. Fangu's limitation, aside from the don't have too many evil players, is the outsiders that you put on the script with it. Mezephiles might be more what characters are you putting on the script with it? Are there any strong things that you can do with the townsfolk that it's playing against, or even some of the outsiders that's playing against? Like, you probably wouldn't want to put it on a script with some of the characters that we talked about not maybe not having as being like bounty hunter turned characters. Like it's tricky to put a Mazephiles on a script if you're going to put an alchemist on that script or a courtier on that script or something like that. So I think that the fact that the Mazephiles allows for any character to turn evil, whereas the Fangu only allows for an outsider and the bounty hunter only allows for whatever the storyteller thinks is appropriate, might give you a little bit more pause for thought as a script builder.
Yeah, there's maybe some. So, like, the only outsider that I think actually really just straight up works poorly with Mez is a politician. That's it. And it's not the best with Heretic, I think, because if you do manage to turn the Heretic, then evil just like wins. But shrug. I still think that it's A tier.
Okay, I'll throw this one as well. You've heard our thoughts on the Mazephiles. Well, I'll open that poll once I've briefly touched on the Minstrel and why it's going straight into D tier. You know what? Here's a reason why Minstrel's going straight into D tier. Legion, Amnesiac, Balloonist, Bounty Hunter, Cult Leader, Dreamer, Empath, Juggler, Legion, Golem, Heretic, Boom Dandy, Serenovus, Evil Twin, Fearmonger, Legion, Goblin, Marionette, Orb Grinder, Psychopath, Vizier, Al-Hadikia, Legion, Leviathan, Lil Monster, Legion, Zombull, and also Legion. Don't put it on the script with any of them.
Yep.
What do you think about the
I like that you listed a demon that's like literally in the same script as Minstrel.
Okay, so Zombull and Minstrel are fine on BMR, but anywhere else you can start to have problems with them. Because like the double execution, the fact that Minstrel drunks the Zombull, allowing the Zombull to be executed, isn't too much of a problem on BMR because there's no information on BMR and the evil team can probably socially direct it away from that. You got the mastermind to be like, oh, no, it's fine. It was just a mastermind day. We need to execute the already dead player rather than go living hunting. Whereas Zombull on another script can be a bit more open if you don't have reasons to execute the dead.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, do you have anything you want to add to Legion? Sorry, to Legion, God. To Minstrel? Or should we just leave it where it is?
It's where it belongs.
And where does Monk belong?
I would put it in A tier. I think that there are some demons that it can work a little weirdly with. I'm not a fan of it with Al-Hadikia. It plays like double duty on Puka, so it's particularly strong against that. But there's lots of demons that I think it works interestingly with, like Vigor or Nodashi. And it's a very kind of simple and straightforward character for the most part. Gets a little bit weird with some little monster stuff, but not too weird, I don't think. I think that'll also become clearer when we get the little monster write-up eventually, but you know.
Yeah, I also think that Monk is an A-tier character. I would understand people who wanted to put it in B. I think that its biggest weakness as a character is against the Puka, where it gets where it can functionally protect a player twice. Like it gets 2 shots at every protection it gets. But yeah, I think for the most part, it does interesting things when it's taken off TB, and it's already very interesting on TB. So yeah, I think it's A tier.
Okay.
Do we have an answer for Mez yet? Yeah, Mez is going in B tier for now. The Moonchild. I don't think Moonchild can be... Okay, so just to verbalize my thoughts, this isn't necessarily saying where I'm going to put it, but I don't think Moonchild can be above B tier. I think that its extra kill on the wrong script is usually too strong for the good team. I think you need a lot of reasons for there not to be another kill. I don't think it's D tier though, because I do think it's a character that you can absolutely build around, even though it's a BMR character. So I think it lands.
Put it in C.
I think it lands B to C, but I think that it lands C. So yeah. Do you have any more thoughts on Moonchild?
No, not really. I think C is a perfectly fair spot for it.
Sure. So how about the Mutant then? My favorite character, of course, but yeah, how about the Mutant?
So if you don't put it on a script with a Cerenovus, then it can sort of just be like a bit of a. They can attempt to be a bit of like a self-nomming virgin, right, where they just out and end the day and get proven as a good player. But like, I don't really think that's necessarily an issue. A storyteller doesn't have to execute them, and they can also just stave off that execution until it becomes significantly more harmful for the good team to execute them if they don't walk that back real hard. So, yeah, in terms of script building, I think it's. I think it's an S tier. I don't really see any issues with it. I could be convinced on A maybe if you see some, but I don't really see any issues with it.
Yeah, I think that Molly has kind of pointed what I think is the biggest issue with it on some scripts, as well as you, that it can be if you put it on a script without a Cerenovus and it just claims to be the mutant and you execute it, you've got a virgin, and you don't execute it, you've not got an outsider. You've got someone whose ability is you don't have an ability.
It's an outsider if they don't like. It's an outsider if you wait to execute them at the worst possible moment. Like they have to work really hard to walk that back. And then if they're not doing that, then okay, you're in a final four. This mutant is now like fucking executable and gonna lose the game kind of level. So I think it can still be an outsider, but I do think that it mitigates it. So I understand that. I also think, yeah, Molly's right about like with non-info roles, it's kind of easy to just claim something and chill. You're not actually contributing misinformation to the game, which is kind of the point of that type of madness. So I'd be happy to put it in A tier then.
Yeah, I do think it's an A tier character. I wish it were an S tier character. I do understand your point that it's probably fine without a Cerenovus. It doesn't require it. Like there are plenty of good scripts without it. And like, but on the other hand, when was the last time I wrote a script that I didn't at least strongly consider putting a mutant on?
Right.
So yeah. S or A? I'll throw this one to chat as well, because I think that we can. I think that you think it's S, I think it's A, but we're both fine to put it on the other. So yeah, we'll see what chat reckon about this one. But while I'm doing that, how do you feel? I can't remember who sent this, but how do you feel about Night Watchman? Oh, it's my turn, but it's fine. You go.
I mean, I think it plays weirdly with some stuff. It's like a really hard confirmation of a Vortox game. I think Evil doesn't bluff it enough, but that's gameplay related, not script related. So I don't know, shrug. I think I'd probably be inclined to put it into B tier. There's like, it's really good with hard confirmation, but you maybe want to put it on scripts with things that could stop it on night one, but also not things where it traces a demon. So like being next to a Nodashi, it might point straight to a Nodashi, right? And you can't do anything to stop that as a storyteller. So yeah, maybe like a B to a C.
Yeah, I find that the Night Watchman, and I find this to my surprise because I didn't initially like it very much, but I find that it's a character that I really can put. Like, I think that the Night Watchman is a character that you can look at a script and be like, Night Watchman will fit on this script and it will be interesting on the script, or Night Watchman will not work on the script, kind of like a moment's glance. And I do think that that's more in the favor of the Night Watchman, as in the ratio of that is more in the favor of the Night Watchman. So I do think overall it lands on the B end of what you were talking about, but I agree that it's probably not higher than that, because the other character that you mentioned, of course, that it's horrible with is Vortox.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's B.
Okay, so Mutant goes into A, Night Watchman into B. I think those are both right spots for them.
Yeah. Okay, the Noble. Start knowing 3 characters, of which exactly one is good. I think this is a neat, a nice little bit of info that is probably not going to carry a script by itself, and I think that's a small knock against it. And I think there are a few situations where a Noble might not be the right choice for your script, but I don't think it can fall any lower than A. I would understand if somebody wanted to put it into the S tier, but I think it's an A tier character personally.
I think it's an S tier.
You think it's an S tier? Why?
I mean, where does it have any weird interactions? It doesn't. It plays interestingly if you have misregistration on the script. It plays interestingly if you don't. It plays interestingly if you have reasons for misinformation on a script. Yeah, I don't see any problems with it.
I think it's a little bit weird if you are dealing with I think it's a little bit weird if you're dealing with a Vortox, and I think it's even weirder if you're dealing with a Legion. But those two might just be like how people play with it rather than scripting it.
Yeah, I don't have any issues with those interactions. I think those are interesting interactions.
Noble Leviathan is really tough. Is it? What's wrong with Noble Leviathan?
I don't think so.
It's an upgraded knight. I don't know. It's not. It's not because it can see the demon, which is how it differs from the knight. Okay, you sold me. Let's put it in S.
Noble with Vortox would be shown anything except specifically one evil player. So they can learn 2 evil, they can learn 3 evil, they can learn no evil in a Vortox game.
Yeah. Talk to me about Squiddy Boy.
As Drinks lovingly calls it, the Squid Baron, because it takes out two townsfolk with its poison.
Yes.
Honestly, yeah. So I think that you're going to struggle if you put an Odashi in a script with a whole lot of mechanical roles, because once again, you don't have control over what happens with those mechanics. As a storyteller, if that's poisoned, the mechanics just cannot work, and therefore they can be big ol' flashers to where your Nodashi is. So I think you just need to be careful of that. It needs to go in scripts that tend to have more information roles or mechanical roles that maybe can't quite tell whether they're poisoned or not, or it'll take them quite a while to figure out. So I think it's a pretty strong demon. Otherwise, it's only as weak as the storyteller kind of like it is with running it with regards to the poison and misinformation. But yeah, other than that, I think it's fairly flexible. It's one of my favorite demons, both like to play with as well as to sort of like fit onto scripts. So I'm inclined to give it like A, maybe a B. I could be convinced into a B.
So I think my leaning is B. I think that when you were talking about how it works with mechanical characters, as people have said in chat, that very much mirrors the chat that we had about the Leech earlier. But I think the biggest difference between Nodashi and Leech that puts Nodashi above the Leech is that it's a lot easier to volunteer yourself for an execution than it is to volunteer your neighbor for an execution if you think that if you think that your ability isn't working properly.
Yeah.
Is it A tier? Is it much better than the Leech?
I mean, I'd be all right if it goes into a B. I think that's fine.
Okay, we'll put it in B. I do understand where you're coming from, though. I think the Nodashi is... I could put it in A. The thing with the Nodashi is that it's a character that does do a lot that other demons don't, and I do think there are a lot of scripts that do benefit from the Nodashi, but I do think that there are a lot of pitfalls. So we'll leave it in B for now, but chat, if you think that it's A, let us know. As we talk about the Organ Grinder, which is my favorite. Is it my favorite minion? It's one of my favorite minions, but it's not the most flexible minion. I had a lot of work building an Organ Grinder script that we could run on stream. I did end up building 2 or 3 of them, but that's just because I really like the Organ Grinder. But there are a lot of things that it has to pay attention to. I think there are a lot of characters that will not be happy to see an Organ Grinder, and there are a lot of evil characters that will be very, very happy to see an Organ Grinder, or outsiders and evil characters, where the evil team will be very, very happy to see an Organ Grinder that you need to be aware of. I don't think that Organ Grinder has a character that you like, never put these two on a script together. I might be missing one, but nothing. I suppose the ones that it's hard jinxed with, but those are both D tier anyway. Well, no, Minstrel is D tier. Oh, we put Preacher in A tier. Anyway, I think it's C tier. I don't think that it's impossible to build scripts around, and I don't think that it breaks scripts. I don't think that it necessarily has interesting interactions that a script builder should be thinking about. I think it's, which is weird considering how there it is. Weirdly, some of its most interesting interactions are with travelers. But yeah, I don't think it's very really a character that you can just be like, hey, here's a script. I've added an organ grinder to it. Hope you like it. I could be tempted by B, but I think it's C.
Yeah, I'm slightly more inclined towards B than you are, but I think a C is also fine for it.
Why are you thinking
it's
B?
Like maybe low B, high C.
Why would you say B?
Just because I think it's not really all that difficult. Like, you can't slot it into just any script, but I think it's not as difficult as, say, Leviathan or an Alhad.
Yeah, that's fair. Maybe I'm underselling it a little bit. Chat, what do you think? Is it B or is it C? And also, Navian, what do you think about the Oracle?
Oracle needs some amount of misinformation with it, or like misregistration maybe, to mess with its numbers. Otherwise, it can be incredibly strong. I think other than that, like it can have some weird interactions with like Zombuul, for example. It's not great with. For the most part, though, it doesn't really struggle to fit into most scripts. So I think it's fairly flexible, as long as, I mean, most scripts should have like sources of misinformation, right? So I'd probably put it into A.
I think that the Oracle as a character works best when it's dealing with evil teams that can plausibly die in the night, whether that's imps, Vigs, right. Fangus, or even legions, or even alphas. Yeah. I think it also is interesting with a little even bit weakened. Well, Shabloths, yeah.
Kill your minions so they can get regurgitated.
Which actually leads on to my next point, because I think it's also interesting with demons that do kill multiple times. Even if that demon is a Poe that probably isn't going to be killing its minions, if your number increases, then you got to. Maybe one of them was actually on the evil team, and they're just really trying to frame this good player that we executed. But then again, the thing is, you've got a demon that doesn't die in the night, or doesn't cause its teammates to die in the night. What does an Oracle do there? Is it not a worse Undertaker?
Does that matter? Like, certainly when you're building a custom script, sure, maybe you can consider whether you want either an Oracle or an Undertaker, but not both. But like, we're not comparing them directly to each other. We're looking at how Oracle fits on scripts, and I think Oracle fits on quite a lot of scripts quite easily. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't break anything. And it does have a lot of interesting interactions. I suppose that does make it an A. Pacifist. Pacifist screams B tier to me. It can only work on scripts where you've got people who don't die for other reasons, or it becomes the strongest character in Blood on the Clock Tower. But if you've got that, the Pacifist is often a nice little extra counter to a DA. But then again, it kind of only really works with a DA. It doesn't really work with a leech unless you want to hard frame a particular player as being the leech, which often just rules them out as being a demon candidate, unless they are the leech host, in which case please don't do that. So maybe it should be a step behind the DA in C. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it belongs in C.
Yeah, I think I talked myself into thinking it's C. Unless you got anything to add on Pacifist?
Nope.
Okay, Philosopher then.
So there are some things that do play weirdly with Philosopher. It's well known that I have house rules with Philosopher Bounty Hunter to sort of make sure that you're not just getting all the benefits without the downsides. I think there's other things that it sort of plays almost like quote unquote optimally with, like if you have a Philo with, in particular, Poppy Grower, sometimes Magician as well. It's sort of almost always people are going to go for that as a sort of like, this is just the thing to do. That's something that you do have to think about when you put a philo on a script. Is there a townsfolk here that like every single player is going to go for every single time? I think it looks more flexible than it actually is as a result of that. So I would probably put it into a B tier.
Yeah, you pretty much said everything that I was going to say. Be careful about what you put it on a script with. But if you do put it on a good script, you will find that it works for you. It does. It has the misinformation that it can generate, but it's good source misinformation. Put it on an info script that, and you're laughing. It works best with info roles, I think.
Sorry, what?
It works best with information, I think, rather than mechanics. Overall.
Yeah, I could probably agree with that, but I'm not sure how big of a difference there is
I don't.
For me personally.
I think it's B. I agree. The pit hag is an interesting one. I think that there are a few weirdnesses that you can create with arbitrary deaths, in particular. That particularly with demons like Al Hadikia that can be extremely silly. And just the idea of some characters coming into and going out of play itself can be a little bit weird. I think that the pit hag can lead itself to some optimal, but also interesting, but still optimal plays, like turning itself into a surprise virgin at the end of the game. And I think that it's a bit that there are some characters that it can be a little bit exploitable with, like often the drunk and the marionette being obvious choices, although we've spoken before about how pit hags storytellers probably should be telling them they have changed character more often than they do.
Yeah.
But I think that it still does fit quite nicely into a lot of scripts. So I think that it's A. If you want to tell me it's B, I could understand that.
So I do think that you need to be careful with pit hag with alignment changers, and that is actually, we haven't gotten to Spirit of Ivory yet, but when we get there, we can talk about that some. That's sort of the thing where if you have an alignment changer and a pit hag on a script, you almost need to put the Spirit of Ivory on, because you can't just rely on your players to not do what is the quote unquote optimal thing and then sometimes make it a not fun time for players as a result. You're forced to put Spirit of Ivory on the script to stop that, or to just let people have bad games. So I think I would probably put it into B as a result of that. But it's probably a pretty high B for me.
Yeah, I didn't consider that. I also think that the pit hag works best when it is on a script that has multiple demons. It's probably not great if you've got a one demon script.
Yeah, and also, as Molly is pointing out, pit hag with a lot of death variability feels a little bad because it's often unsolvable when there's been a pit hag demon change.
Yeah. So yeah, all in all, it's B. That's fair. Pixie, go.
I love the Pixie. I know that you personally don't like Pixie with Fortox, but I've got no problem with that because that's bluffable by evil. Yeah, I would really put it in S tier, to be honest.
Interesting. I don't always hate Pixie with Fortox. I sometimes do. It depends on what else is on the script. I used to, but I've seen it work often enough that I have less of a problem with it than I used to. Is it S tier? Maybe. We had, when we talked about the Cerenovus, we had the discussion about whether Cerenovus and Pixie work well together. We're now talking about the Pixie. So you got the same issue, but that's just one character that it might not be the best with. I think there are a bunch of townsfolk that you probably don't necessarily care about getting the ability of as a Pixie. For example, a magician, just to pull one out of the hat, as it were. Yes, that was a pun, an intended pun. But I do think that there's probably going to be enough characters on the script that you'll find at least half a dozen that Pixie can quite happily see. So yeah, no, you're right. It's S tier. The Poe. I think the Poe is going to be I've been experimenting with the Poe quite a bit recently, and I think that it doesn't actually need to be the only cause of multiple to not be the only cause of multiple deaths on the script. I think that if you have reasons why nobody might die in the night, then I think that the 3 kills that it can generate are powerful enough that even though it's obvious that a Poe just charged and killed, that it can work fine. There are some issues that it has with some other characters, in particular, like we just said, the pit hag. There's an exploit there that you can quite easily do, and I do think it probably warrants other characters that can prevent kills during the night. So I think it's A tier, but I would struggle to put it lower than that. But what do you think?
I would probably put it into B, just because I think you do need some amount of like death protection in the night, but you also might want to consider some amount of extra deaths in order to cover up when it's a Poe charge. Because when it's too obvious that it's a Poe charge, sometimes that can be like a detriment to the evil team. So I'd probably put it a little bit more into B than I would A. But I think of the multi killers, it's not too bad really.
Yeah. We'll throw it to chat again. What do you think? Because I don't hate either of those options. Now the poisoner. Go on. Tell us why the poisoner is S tier. Because I think that's what you're going to.
I actually think it's A tier.
I also think it's A tier, but go on. Interesting.
So it's S tier in my heart for like roles that I love, but in terms of script building, it's A tier. So you do kind of have to pay attention to what the demons are. So for example, if you have a poisoner on a Vortox script and all of your townsfolk roles are information roles, then your poisoner is doing nothing, right? So you do have to pay attention to those kinds of things. What is my mix of info versus mechanical? Where's my other sources of misinformation coming from? And is it too much with these other sources of information? Are there roles where poisoner feels like extra bad with, like for example balloonist is usually like something that people look at and go no, we hate that. Some roles work better with like static sources of poisoning, and some work better with moving sources of poisoning. So you paying attention to that as well, things like acrobat or whatever. So I put it into A as a result.
Yeah, I also think it's A. I was expecting to have to argue with you a little bit on this one, or debate this one with you a little bit. But it is A. As Child Round says, it's balloonists hate it. But like that's kind of what I think you were talking about when you're talking about static versus moving. Yeah, I think it's A. Politician. I don't know where I want to put the politician. I don't love the politician as a character. And that's making me want to put it low, but I don't actually think it's all that bad. I actually do think it's quite flexible as a character. I think that obviously you need to be aware of too many alignment changes as one thing to worry about. Obviously, we've spoken earlier about Mizethles and politician can have a potentially horrible interaction, but I've actually never seen it. I don't know if you've ever seen.
Neither have I.
No. It's something to be aware of.
And I would like to not.
Yeah, I agree. So maybe that's overstated a little bit. But yeah, I think that I struggle to find too many issues with the politician that in terms of script building. I find plenty of issues with it as a character. In terms of script building, I struggle to find this doesn't work situations beyond flooding the market with evil players. So I think it's A or B. It's not S because of that.
Yeah,
worry.
for sure. I would put it into B. So like you have to be wary of other alignment flippers. You also have to be wary of things like Legion, for example, or like Vizier, Organ Grinder, those kinds of things where it's just like Poly has a very clear way forward with voting stuff, and it's hard to, or like Evil Twin, it's hard to argue that a politician who never comes out as a twin purposefully gets themselves executed based off of whatever excuse that they're making isn't like the most responsible for their own team, right? So I think there's definitely some things that it does not belong with.
That's absolutely fair. Yeah, it's B. How do you feel about Poppy Grow?
Pretty versatile. Doesn't work great with demons that poison, like, well, Puka specifically, right? They die poisoned, and the evil team never learns, which is sad because the demon managed to kill the Poppy Grower, and I don't think that's how it should work. I don't like how it works with Vortox. I house rule around it because I think that's weird. That's using an evil ability to hurt evil, which doesn't feel right. It's fairly versatile outside of those, but like you do have to pay careful attention to where your poison or drunking is coming from. You can have a poisoner who manages to poison the Poppy Grower on the same night that the demon kills them, and that feels rough. So I'd probably put it into A. It's fairly flexible with a couple of caveats.
Yeah, it's definitely not S, and it's definitely not lower than B. I think it's in that region. I think I would probably lean towards putting it in B because it is a character that I do struggle to put onto script, even though I want to because I like it. But you can, with somewhat confidence, build a script with a Poppy Grower on it. So I don't hate A. I'm going to throw it to chat, but if this one's close, I think we'll nudge it into A because, like, if there's an overwhelming vote for B, then we'll put it in B. But if it's like 50-50 or even slightly B, then we'll put it into A because, yeah, I can see the argument there. Wait, I thought we did Preacher. No, Librarian. I'm getting my books confused. Preacher.
So Preacher doesn't work with your very loud outed minions, so things like Psychopath, it's potentially not great with Organ Grinder. Vizier, it's terrible with. There's some minions where it's just not really doing anything, so like Preacher with a Baron, for example, you hit the Baron, it does literally nothing, they've already done their damage, so some things it's okay with, even though they're outed, because it can be bluffed, so things like Preacher Goblin, evil can bluff, I'm a preacher who shows the goblin, and win off of that. I have seen that. But it's also sad for the goblin when there's actually a preacher in the game. So it's not like a terrible combo. It's not as bad as some of the other outed minions, but it's also not like fantastic either. So I would put preacher into probably like B, maybe C tier. I mean, Preacher is all about the minions that you have on the script, so for the most part, you don't really need to think too much about the other things that are going to be on there. But I think it works with most minions, so I would put it into B.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards. I agree that it's BC. I do think that it affects too many. Well, people want Poppy and Beat, sure. I do think that it affects games in quite a. Okay, I do think it affects scripts that have one of those minions that you've spoken on in not a fun way, but you do make a good point about the counterplay towards the goblin. It can. Like somebody said, I've lost it because I'm on the wrong screen. But somebody pointed out that it can differentiate alchemists from minions, which might not be the best thing, depending on what the minion they see is, of course. And that might come under setup choice, but you ideally want a script to have as many possible setups as possible. Obviously, that's the only real townsfolk that it interacts with. Aside from the Recluse, which you probably just don't want to do. Although I did once have a player successfully bluff that they were a Recluse who got preached, which was honestly incredible. I've never actually seen a Recluse get preached, but I've seen it bluffed, and that was good enough. but yeah, I don't think it's impossible to build a script around. And I think that when you do build a good script around it, it works on that script. So I do think that B is probably a good place for it to land. The Professor.
D tier.
It's hard to make an argument for it not being D tier, because
that's because there isn't one.
Yeah, fine. It needs a shab, and even then, it might not work. All right, the Psychopath. I think the Psychopath. It's A or B. I lean towards B. I think that it has. We've spoken about a number of things already that can go wrong with psychopaths and characters that can just completely neutralize them in particular. But if you build a script without any of those, it probably works, unless the point of your script is to create confusion with minions and not entirely know which one it is. And I think that there are some minions that really benefit from being kind of quiet. I think it's low A tier. What do you think?
I would put it into B.
You put it into B?
Yeah. I think there's some demons that it doesn't fit with. Like, it's not great with Leviathan, for example. I think that with roles that can counter outed evils like Preacher, it's not great. And it is a direct counter. Like, you can just kill a king and not have to worry about a choir boy, right? Like, that kind of thing is not fun.
That's true.
I'd put it into B.
That's true. I'm going to throw it to chat, but again, I think that's a pretty convincing argument. How are you going to feel about the Tucker? This is a weird one for me, and I need to know. I need to take a moment to gather my thoughts.
It's one of my favorite demons. I love poison. I think it does weird stuff with its poison, which is really cool for me. I think it interacts interestingly with various things, like, for example, the Exorcist is often something, or the Innkeeper even, that like doesn't stop the poison from happening, but stops the kill, so that can cause some confusion. So I think it does have a lot of interesting interactions, but it's also got some interactions that are less fun. So, for example, Poppy Grower. It doesn't work great with things that trigger on death that are mechanical. So, like Barber or Sweetheart is not good with it. I don't think it's that difficult to fit into custom scripts, but I do think that you do need to be careful. So I'd probably put it into like B. I could maybe be convinced on C, but I'm leaning B right now.
Yeah, obviously you and I disagree about Barber, but we don't really need to discuss that because it's not hugely relevant because everything else still holds. I think I think it's fine in most cases and can do a lot of interesting things, but there are certainly issues with it that you've pretty much highlighted. So I think I agree with what you said, and I think I agree with where you've landed it in the end. B, but if somebody wanted to make the case that it was C, can't argue. Yeah, Psychopath has also landed in B. Puzzle Master. I think the Puzzle Master is... I think it's A tier. I can't think of a whole lot of things that it really breaks with. There are some things that might not be the best if you have a cannibal who eats a Puzzle Master and then dies. That might not be. That might just be like there's a point to say that that's well played by the evil team, maybe, but at the same time, it can be a little bit overwhelming for the good team. Not well played
by the good team. Just don't execute outsiders only when you have a cannibal. Come on.
Right, but they can also be killed by the evil team, and they still. I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. In order for the cannibal to have it, you have to execute the Puzzle Master. So just don't do that. There you go.
I mean, you might have reasons to execute them that aren't just, oh, it's an outsider. They're a sacrificial lamb. That is a risk that you have to take as a good team, of course. I think that it can be a little bit weird. Not necessarily weird, but not interesting if it comes into play fairly late, when it doesn't have time to gather info but might still have a devastating effect on the game. So I'm not sure how well it works with characters that can create new instances of it, like Pit Hag and Barber. But maybe that's what you want it to do. I think it's A. I am seeing fewer and fewer reasons for it not to be high A, maybe even S. What are you thinking about the Puzzle Master?
I think it's an A.
You think it's an A?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're in agreement then. Do you have any thoughts on anything I've said? Why do you think it's not an S?
I think that you do need to be careful with your mechanical rolls with it, because sometimes it can be a little too obvious who's puzzle drunk.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I know you're saying that it can help the good team chat, but that comes down to a question of storytelling and character design rather than script design, I think. But yeah, that's absolutely fair. It depends on what it's on the script with. How are you feeling about the bird? The second bird.
As we all know, I love the bird. What does Ravenkeeper work poorly with? Nothing.
Vortox.
S tier. What are you talking about? I love it.
What? No, it's just one character that it's not.
Yeah, that can be helpful. As a storyteller, you can be really helpful with that.
You can, but
it maybe plays a little bit less interestingly with Vortox than other demons, just kind of depending on what you as a storyteller plan to do with that. But it's extremely flexible otherwise.
Any demon that doesn't kill?
Okay, that's fair. Any demon that doesn't kill, which is what? Legion, Leviathan... Riot. I think it's got a jinx with Riot.
It does have a jinx. It does have a jinx with Riot. The jinx is
actually,
that
it does have
Riot,
a jinx with Leviathan.
Yeah, if Riot or Leviathan nominate the Ravenkeeper and get them killed, they get to use their ability. Which
and I'm pretty sure it has a jinx with Leviathan.
Yeah, same jinx, Riot or Leviathan.
So, yeah.
So
it even works
work
with the non-kills. It's a little awkward with something like Lil Monster or Legion, where the storyteller is choosing the night kills, but like, I think that's fine. That's not really all that different from a Ravenkeeper who exists in a spy game and just doesn't die. Like, it's fine.
And that's another one. Like, Spy and Ravenkeeper isn't the worst thing in the world, but I'd argue it's not necessarily the best thing in the world to be a character that's trying to die but knows that you've not got any choice. I know that there's obviously ways that you can play that and be like, okay, that's fine. The evil team just can't kill me. But it might not be what you want out of the game as a player. And that does ultimately come back to the script design. Obviously, TB is a perfect script that nobody can criticize. So Spy and Ravenkeeper is obviously brilliant, but still. I think it's A. I do think that the jinxes with Riot and Leviathan aren't the best because they directly point to a demon, whereas the Ravenkeeper only really does that if they pick the demon.
I hate it with Leviathan, but that's because I hate all of those Leviathan scripts or jinxes. I'm fine with it with Riot though.
Yeah, I suppose the difference with Riot is that there's still 2 more demons that you have to find. Or 1 more demon or 3 more demons or however many you've got.
Yeah, like, it's fine. I'm still sticking that Ravenkeeper is an S.
Okay. Well, we'll throw it back to chat then.
I think chat's going to be wrong.
You think chat's going to be wrong?
Yeah, they're going to put it into A, and I think that's wrong, but that's fine. You can be wrong.
Well, I think that you're biased because it's a bird.
No, I think it's just... I think it's significantly more flexible than one of the birds, which is Sage. I think it's nearly as flexible as Farmer itself. It just does it in a slightly different way. We have Farmer in S tier. I think Ravenkeeper does there too.
We do have Farmer in S tier. Did chat put Farmer in S tier? Because I think Farmer's A tier. But we're not gonna...
I can't remember. We don't have time to go back.
Well, we don't. It looks like you're getting your way. At the moment, but there's still some time. Recluse. Recluse. I think that there are. So Recluse, I think, has some things that like Recluse is the epitome of yes but don't, of course. Most of the problems that Recluse has are within the storyteller's power to handle. And even if they weren't, I think Recluse has enough interesting things that it can do that it would still be an S tier character. I don't think it's a coincidence that you are saying every time we do a script notes, your comment is always, okay, but have you considered a Recluse?
Yes.
I do think that the only like major don't put these two together is Flower Girl.
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't think that you're going to have too many problems with Recluse. I don't love it with Town Crier, but Flower Girl is the big red flag.
Yeah, because getting somebody else to nominate for you is usually not too difficult, but getting somebody else to vote for you can be.
Fine, the bird goes an S.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do think that Recluse is still an S tier character, and I don't think you're going to disagree.
No, I don't disagree.
Right. So we have our first fabled of the session. How do you feel about the revolutionary? Is this not applicable, or is there enough that we can talk about it as a character for script design purposes?
So there is, of course, a very popular script out there based on the revolutionary pairs.
There's two, I think.
There's two. Well, I know of one, but I think that you can build a script around it, of course. But that's clearly not the intention of it. Unlike, say, Duchess, which is an actual like you're meant to put this on scripts for like reasons, but its intent is, of course, that it is for accessibility purposes, right? You pair a player with another player who's guaranteed to be on their team if you have something like a language barrier or a physical disability that would, make it more difficult for them to play. You could give it to somebody who's very, very young, or sometimes you might have, like, say, couples who can't play on opposite teams of each other. That's definitely something. That's its original intention. I think the fact that people have taken it outside of its intention and made some interesting scripts with it, I don't think that means that it should belong in one of the tiers other than NA. Like, I would personally put it in the not applicable category.
I agree. I think that even those scripts do kind of stretch its intent. Like, you absolutely can put multiple revolutionaries into a game if you need to. Like, if you've got multiple people who you think should be in revolutionary pairs for whatever reason, but it's not the intent of the character. The intent is very much there is one player who should probably be, or one pair of players who should probably be in a pair. We're going to make that the case. So yeah, I don't think that we should be considering it as a script building character. So Riot.
Riot has the most jinxes of anything ever. Some of them are not great. A lot of them would be solved if Riot just registered as a minion too, but there's, I'm sure, reasons why they didn't do that for, whatever reason. I think that Riot, you have to really pay attention to the script that you're writing for it. There's a lot of roles that kind of don't really do a whole lot with Riot. You sort of have to plan around the fact that it's going to be a shorter game, and that some abilities are going to need like time to do stuff that you have to be careful with as a storyteller when you're running Riot scripts. Like, if you have a juggler or a slayer, for example, giving them time to actually use their ability before you open up nominations, and then they just get like completely fucked. I would put Riot as a result, although I like Riot and I like Riot games. I would put Riot for script building purposes probably in a D tier.
Yeah, I think that you can make a case that it's C. I think that there are plenty of things that you can do, but I think the sheer number of jinxes points at it being a D tier character. How are we doing for time? Got like 15 minutes?
I have 15 minutes.
Okay. Do you want to wrap it up here, or should we do one
more? We can do one more.
Okay. Talk to us about the Sage then. Where's Sage going? Now that you got both your Farmer and your Recluse in S tier, is Sage joining them?
You meant Ravenkeeper. No, I don't think Sage should join them. I actually think of the birds, Sage is the most inflexible, just because yes, they all fall into the niche of like this is a thing that the demon does not want to kill in the night. But Sage, so the farmer is about confirming good players. The Raven Keeper is flexible in terms of whether it's confirming a good player or trying to seek out evil players. And the Sage just very directly gives you two players, one of whom is the demon that killed them. That requires careful attention to misinformation on the script. So obviously, for example, its home script has Vortox, which does give it that sort of like, do I want to kill the people who I've learned, or do I actually want to leave them alive because they're definitely not the demon? You can do interesting things as a storyteller there if you have mobile demons. Like you can give a minion who could become a demon later, and that's something that they have to consider. But if you don't have the right kinds of misinformation where the Sage is unsure of whether they should or should not actually kill into their pings, it's not that fun of a role to put like for games. So I think it's significantly less flexible than either Farmer or Raven Keeper, although it is still in the bird category. So that means I love it as a character. Scripts building purposes, I'd probably put it in like a C.
That low.
Yeah, like I kind of want to put it into B, but I think the reason I want to put it into B is because I love birds. I think for script building purposes, it really is fairly inflexible.
My favorite bird, the candle. I think the reason why I would say B is because when it's on the script and when it's on a script appropriately, it is clearly the right choice for that script. Like I think, obviously, from what we were saying earlier, we know that I disagree with you about how well Ravenkeeper goes with Vortox, but I think that Sage is so much better with Vortox and when Vortox is on a script than the Ravenkeeper is. So I think that the Sage, when it's on the right script, I think arguably does even more interesting things than Recluse and Farmer.
You mean Ravenkeeper?
I do mean Ravenkeeper. That's the second time I've done that now.
Sure it is.
Ravenkeeper and Farmer. It's because the Recluse and the Ravenkeeper are right next to each other. So I do think that bumps it up a little bit. Does it bump it up into a B? It's B or C. We'll put it over. We'll send it over to chat for the final time tonight. You've had plenty to do, chat. Help us out this one last time, and then we're going to make sure that Nathan gets to whatever it is that they need to do. Probably burning my mint signs or something.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we still have like 10 minutes. We can do a couple of more characters.
Do you not want to relax for a little bit?
No.
Okay, we can keep going. That's fine. What are we saying? Saying B or C? All right.
Yeah, B or C for Sage.
In that case, we come to the Sailor. The Sailor. So obviously we've got the cap again. It can't really be above a B because that's where we put all of the characters that can survive execution. And I think it's another character that lands right in the middle of that. I think it's a C tier character. I think that its drunkenness can on a good script really work for it. I think that a character that can survive it, if you want a character that can survive execution, it's like a good townsfolk. It's perhaps about as good as the pacifist and not quite as good as the fool. I don't think it breaks too much. There are, like I say, there are certainly unfun things that the drunkenness can do. You probably don't want to put it on scripts with a balloonist, particularly considering that it has to pick on the first night, unlike an innkeeper, and that's just not fun for anyone. It provides, in my opinion, the best leech cover. I know that you think that's the fool, and I do understand why. But yeah, I think it averages out to a C.
I agree. I think Sailor belongs in C.
The Sailor belongs at the C. There we go. Sage is also going in C.
Okay.
Sage is going right next to its fellow bird, the pacifist.
Good for you, Sage.
How do you feel about the Saint?
So you don't want to pair Saint with things like Vizier. It's probably a little bit more of a struggle with something like an organ grinder, although I don't think it's like, I don't think that's a hard no, unlike, with Vizier, for example. Other than that, it really seems to be quite flexible. We've moved to a please stand by page for some reason.
I know.
Okay. Yeah, I think Saint is fairly flexible. Again, other than anything that could force an execution through, I think there's not really anything that it plays poorly with. So I'd probably, I don't know, I'm leaning like S or A. I could be convinced on either one, I think.
I'm going to say A, because I think that there are one or two characters that, like we were talking about when we are talking about the Cerenovus, and I think that this is one that ends more on the Saint's end than the Cerenovus' end. That the Saint needs to be wary of. I think that the fact that it can just end the game is something that you need to be aware of when you're script building. I also think that that it doesn't play well with good characters that can cause deaths, targeted deaths, like with whether that's a gunslinger or a golem, and so on. Anything that can reduce the odds of it ending the game, or even an alchemist with the right ability. Anything that can reduce the odds of a Saint execution ending the game, I think plays away from the Saint. So
see, that stuff doesn't bother me. Like, I'm perfectly fine with that. Like, is it the most interesting stuff? Sure, but like, is it a problem? I don't think it's a problem. It just exists.
Okay. Well, I think it's A. I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Well, sure. How do you feel about this? Well, that was yours to lead. The Savant. I think the Savant is one that can fit quite neatly into most scripts. I struggle to, off the top of my head, think of any reason to keep it away from the upper echelons of character. Can you think of anything?
I think that it plays weirdly with misregistration a little bit,
True.
depending on how individual storytellers interpret misregistration. But that's kind of about it, if there's like sources of misinformation, whether that's through Vortox or through other means, that gives something for savants to think about. They have their own built-in misinformation of their statements. So like, even if you don't have massive quantities of misinformation on the script, it's still fine because you can still, as a storyteller, tailor and balance the information that you're giving. So in the hands of a skilled storyteller, I think Savant is very, very flexible, and there's not too much I wouldn't put it with. So I'd probably put it as like a high A.
You think it's... So the thing with registration is that the storyteller can just not.
They can, but you have to like either ask your storyteller if they do that, and like the answer is mechanically I can, but would I? And they can't really answer that, right? Like you just have to sort of trust your storyteller, and I think it's not something that you can rely on.
That's fair. I suppose there's also the element of a good script is one that anybody can run. Savant statements can be daunting for storytellers. So does that knock it down to an A? Maybe. Why do you think it's?
I don't.
Why do you think it's not S?
Because I think the awkwardness with misregistration, which is something that is, for me at least, a very big part of like potential script building is misinformation from misregistration. Like, I understand that not everybody relies on that. Not every script is going to have misregistration, but I think that it can be an important part of the game. And if you do, then I wouldn't put Savant.
Fair enough. You negotiated the Saint down, so I'll do the same with the Savant. I'm not wedded to that one being an S tier. How are you feeling about the Scapegoat?
Scapegoat S tier.
Yeah, it's hard to find anything really to criticize with it. I suppose the only thing that's a little bit funky with Scapegoat is putting it on a script with an organ grinder, where you can go, hey, everybody, open your eyes now. The Scapegoat's been executed. Good luck figuring out what that means. But aside from that, yeah, the Scapegoat has no problems. It's a really good traveler. It's one of my favorite travelers.
Me too.
The Scarlet Woman has problems, particularly with the Zombull, and I don't like it with Alhad, even with the Jinx.
I hate that Jinx. I hate it. I mean, like, obviously it needs something, because otherwise you just have 2 active demons and you can't do that either. But I don't like the Jinx that it has. I also think that it's particularly harsh with Leviathan. You shouldn't pair those two together. It's a little awkward with Puka because it causes a no Death Knight. Leech, it can be really, really strong with. I kind of house rule a bit into Leech with Scarlet Woman, so that it's not just the objective correct thing to do to execute your found out host on 5 and then get a free host and a free kill and win. So I would put it into A tier. I think it's mostly flexible with some issues with some demons, like some major issues with some demons.
Yeah, that's very much my thinking. I think that the Scarlet Woman adds a bit of very necessary maneuverability for any demon. But there are certainly some demons that you need to be very cautious about putting it with. I don't think there's too many good characters that it really breaks with, though.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why the Seamstress isn't S tier?
Nope.
Okay. It's just a little bit of information that will make almost any script better, I think.
Yep. Seamstress is definitely frequently used on my customs.
Yeah, it's
like I have to talk myself out of putting a Seamstress on. I have to be like, no, you've put Seamstress on too many customs already.
Yeah, it's a really nice character to just have at your disposal. I think at the moment that character for me is probably going to be the damsel that's going on everything as I'm writing at the moment. But you know, it's a good character. All right, let's talk about the Sentinel, the first fable that we can really talk about.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't like the Sentinel. They think it makes games arbitrary. But the one thing that the Sentinel does do, and the only thing the Sentinel does do, is it adds some measure of uncertainty to the outside account.
Yeah.
You don't want to put that on a script, probably where you've already got a significant amount of uncertainty on the outside account. But you really do want to have it on a script where you don't have any. So this is either necessary or basically forbidden, depending on the script. So where the hell does that end up in our tier list? B, in the middle? C, because most scripts already have outside of manipulation? I think it's one of those two.
I'm actually not sure, because it's just a tool that you have a very sort of like straightforward yes or no answer to. Does the script have outsider manipulation? Yes, you don't need it. Does the script not have outsider manipulation? No, then put it on. I think arguably there's some caution around like Sentinel with a drunk, for example, does feel particularly bad. So I would probably caution against using Sentinel on drunk scripts. Maybe swap that out for a Sweetheart or a Puzzle Master, for example, instead. So I think it's fairly easy to avoid that problem, but it is a problem. But like, I don't really know what to do with a tool that's just sort of like a yes/no thing.
Should we let chat decide entirely at their own discretion?
Like, I feel like that doesn't go into not applicable, because that's not true. But like, it also doesn't sort of belong anywhere else. But maybe a B, just sort of right in the middle, is fine.
I think I would probably put it into a B, but let's let chat decide. It's not D tier.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm going to leave D tier off. So yeah, what do you think? We both think it's B, but this is our present to you, chat. Tell us where it goes.
Yeah, Hallow says it's such an important tool that it deserves an A, and I definitely understand like that inclination. It is an important tool. I think it's very important for script builders right now in particular to have that, because we have very limited sources of outsider manipulation, and not every script is going to fit a Baron or a Godfather or the demons that modify outsider count. That's what it's there for. This will be the last character that we do when chat decides where it goes. So, yeah, I think a B right in the middle is fine for it, but
Sure.
shrug.
Well, in that case, we're going to be starting with a fairly easy one next time, because the next one on our list is the Shabaloth.
Oh boy.
And you can find out why we think that the Shabaloth is a D tier character for script building. I think we're going to do this next week, aren't we? We're going to have an additional bonus script notes to because this one was a little bit shorter.
Yes.
Chat are entirely tied between A and B.
So they are.
We said B. Let's throw it in B.
All right, we're going to tie break it into B, even though it's just sort of like, it's just sort of weirdly floating around there as like a tool that you'll either be using or not.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you all very much for joining us for this special episode of Script Notes with me, Aleo F. Black. You can tell that because that's the name of the channel, and also Navian, my close personal enemy. We are going to be back tomorrow. I say we because we're both going to be there. Where we're going to have an abridged stream tomorrow. I'll try and be available for 3 hours. Usually we're there for 4, but we'll see what we can do. Because the honest answer is I have a very busy day on Wednesday and I need to start work really early. So yeah, I can't be going to sleep too late tomorrow. So unfortunately, that means a slightly shorter stream. But yeah, it is what it is. Thank you very much, Nadine, for joining me for this special episode of Script Notes.
Yes, my pleasure. Also, though, I am sorry that we can't finish today. I had multiple appointments. We were going to start even earlier than we did today, and then I looked at my schedule again and wait, nope, I can't do that either. So I am a fool who cannot schedule myself well. I should not be trusted with that, and yet I am.
Well, if you're a fool, you know what that means. You're B tier.
That I'm in the B tier, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's about right. That's where I put you.
I would put myself in uncharacter.
So true. But yeah, I'm gonna let Nathan go now because they really need to go, and I'm also gonna let all of you go because we're done here. But yeah, to make up for the short stream, we are gonna have another one next week, which will be a little bit of a bonus. So we'll see you next week. We'll see you tomorrow, and we'll see you on Sunday. Good night, chat.
Bye.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, the last one is probably already up, and we're probably about to go live for the third part because I'm probably going to put this one up on Monday. Bye.